Thank you so much, Mr. Haas, that you have accepted our interview proposal. I would like to introduce you to our audience. Mr. Kerim Has is an independent Turkish analyst uh,
Thank
from,
you very much for the
from
invitation.
Moscow, I suppose.
Yeah,
Thank
almost.
you so much. Mr. Haas, not losing our time anymore, I would like to switch
Mhm.
on to our questions, if you will let, of course.
Of course.
So, lots of things have occurred in our world recently. The very first question of mine will be associated with what has happened in Syria. The regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria did fall.
Mhm.
So, what were the main reasons of such rapid fall, rapid decline and collapse of the
Mhm.
government that has survived and hold on in this Arabic country for last 50 years?
Mhm. Thank you again for the invitation and for the questions also. Let me answer it in that way. Uh, Maybe we can say that Syria and allies of Syria were in a weak position, relatively weak position, and the timing was perfect from the jihadist groups because there is a transition period. Trump was elected in the United States, and I think there are some leading Western powers, as the United States and the United Kingdom, and they would prefer to minimize the role and influence of Russia in many other regions, and of course, taking into account the war in Ukraine. So we see a kind of a, a very, as I said, perfect timing, and there has been a preparation, professional preparation from the jihadist groups, which were mostly backed by, um, as I think, by Turkey and Turkish government, and also some of the NATO powers in the West. Uh, so on one hand, we see that Syrian army and in general Syria is suffering so much because of the economic sanctions. A dictatorship, as Assad managed the country for many years, and his father. So there is a dynasty. There is a huge discomfort in the country, and mostly more than 10 years the war is continuing. So, and also we should add here the Caesar sanctions, which were accepted by the United States in 2021. So Syrian economy was suffering so much, it directly affects the capacity of the Syrian army. There is also a low motivation to defend the regime, Assad regime, inside the army. We see it. So the Syrian army didn't defend the Assad regime, uh, mm, a corrupt regime actually, and also we can say a corrupt army. The generals are living absolutely different uh, than the Syrian people. So we can say that Syria, both Syria and Syrian army, in a difficult position for many years, and also the allies, the main allies of Syria, such as Russia, Iran, Hezbollah, and Iran-backed militias, were either out of the equation or were very much busy, or they were mostly they concentrated on different issues. For example, Russia has focused on Ukrainian issue conflict there. So, as far as I know, the uh, uh, Russia is not was not in such a situation to send more weapons or more soldiers to Syria to to start uh, huge bombardments against jihadist groups and so on. So Russia didn't have a kind of a land force uh, in Syria. We mostly see Russian military officers or pilots and so on. So Russia was a, mm, mm, how to say, help Syrian army during the conflict with bombardments and with its air force actually. So on the land, Syrian army didn't defend the regime, and Iran was under many attacks by Israel in the last year. So Iran's capacity was diminished, and Iran was not able to send military support or uh, militias to Syria to support the Syrian regime. And we also know that the eastern part of Syria was mostly under control of the United States and Kurds. So the land corridor between from Iran to Syria was already locked, and the United States and the Israel Air Force also they worked as they also attacked when Iran tried to send some militias to support Assad regime. So Hezbollah also was, in my opinion, out of the equation because of the Israeli heavy bombardments in the last months. Their leaders were killed or executed and so on. So we see that both Syria and Syrian allies of Assad regime outside of the country were actually locked to maintain the rule of Assad itself. So it is a perfect timing. But on the other hand, as I said, the HTS, for example, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is recognized by the United Nations Security Council as a terrorist organization, and they also in the last years, since 2020, maybe we can say, in Idlib, they professionally trained their fighters. And Turkey, of course, those people and the jihadist groups, other opposition forces, which were directly supported by Turkish government, they also have taken the weapons from Turkish territory, actually, not from the sky. So the weapons cannot be sent from um, other through other option actually, because there is no any other way. So I can say that before the coming of the power Trump, or because before the second period of presidency of Trump starts, so every party tries to um, strengthen its role inside the arena, and on the other hand, for example, HTS has close links with British side, in my opinion. Not only in my opinion, but I think it is a fact. It doesn't mean that British side is directly sending weapons and so on, but we also see in the Ukrainian media, for example, that they have written it publicly. Uh, some Ukrainian intelligence officers, they also trained the so-called rebels in Idlib to use a kind of drones and technological weapons, and they also openly publicly wrote that the rebels were sponsored by Turkey. So we know the influence of the British side and the American side on the Ukrainian intelligence. So it is understandable that, of course, Ukraine uh, to free its territory from Russian occupation. Uh, Ukraine tries to open second, third fronts or so other fronts in other regions against Russia. So in that sense, of course, Ukraine can take support from its Western allies. It is also clear. So Syria here is a unique option because Syria is far abroad for Russian side. It is not in post-Soviet territory. So it was clear that Russia is not able to send more soldiers, military officers, and so on or weapons to help Assad regime. So if we add all of them, I think it is understandable why the regime fell down, especially in this period. And also we should maybe add the fact that there were some tensions between Russian political leadership and Syrian Assad regime, because Assad was not under fully control of Putin. It was also clear. Assad also didn't uh, haven't taken some steps to modernize, for example, Syrian army or to lift some sanctions again on the country from the other countries, Arab countries, for example, or Russia mostly uh, advised the Syrian side to start a kind of a reconciliation process with some of the, at least, in Astana process with the opposition forces, but Assad was mostly strict. So I think it was also another reason for Russian leadership not to send or not to diversify its military power from Ukrainian front to Syria, actually. So Ukraine was the main priority and is the main priority for Russian side. Probably Putin thinks that if Russia loses in Ukraine, so we will lose everywhere, actually. So it was the main priority for Russia.
Mr. Has, let's also touch the Turkish presence and
Mhm,
participation in all this
mhm,
process. The next question of mine will be associated, as I think, with your historical homeland,
mhm,
with Turkey. The president of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, said that within or the next 2, 3 months will be very important for all, not going or delving into the details of this words
mhm.
of his. According to your opinion, in your mind, what did the Turkish leader mean?
Yeah, I think there are a few sides of the question here. First, of course, Turkish leadership has gained so much in this process in Syria. Turkey-backed opposition rebels, they captured so many new regions in Syria, including Tel Rifat. Probably Manbij is also going to fall down to those opposition forces. So mostly Kurdish populated regions of Syria in the northern part. So it was a kind of a idea fix for Mr. President Erdogan to take control of those towns in Syria. So of course there was a kind of a uh, uh, big problem between Assad and Erdogan also. So what happened in Syria is also a victory for Erdogan. It is clear. So of course there are so many refugees in Turkish territory, Syrian migrants and so on. So in the new period, probably some of them will return to their own country, to Syria. Again, it's another victory for Erdogan. Uh, and in the following 2 or 3 months, probably Erdogan has meant that Turkey or Turkey-backed, because Turkish soldiers are training those opposition forces, but Turkey probably is going to um, latently uh, take control of some other towns, and maybe Turkey can establish a 30-kilometer corridor, land corridor inside Syria, in the northern part of Syria, to mostly push Kurdish people, or the so-called YPG, which is also recognized by Turkey as a terrorist organization. So probably there can be some kind of clash between Turkish army and the uh, Kurdish armed forces in Syria. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, Turkish army is a NATO army. Turkey, in my opinion, is going to win that a kind of a small war. So first of all, uh, that's the most important side of the question. But on the other hand, in the last through 2 3 months in Turkey in domestic politics, there is a discussion to release the leader of PKK, again a terrorist organization, again recognized by Turkey as a terrorist organization. So Abdullah Öcalan, the release of Abdullah Öcalan from the İmralı prison, he is there for almost 25 years. So there is a discussion in Turkish domestic politics that Turkish government can start announce a new peace process with Kurds. So we see such an equation here, and they are directly related with each other, in my opinion, both Turkish domestic politics on Kurds or the issue of releasing Abdullah Öcalan and the recent development in Syria, because Turkey has also prepared to such developments in Syria. So probably, in my opinion, Turkey will take as much as territory in Syria under its own control. But on the other hand, the Kurdish groups in Syria will also strengthen their positions uh, in certain areas with the support of the United States. But on the other hand, Erdogan wants to be re-elected in the next elections in Turkey. But according to constitution, it is impossible. You should change the articles, but there is not such support in Turkish parliament to change the constitution and probably in this Turkish society. So by releasing Abdullah Öcalan from the prison, probably Erdogan mm, wants to take the support of Kurds at the same time, even though Erdogan or Turkish government is fighting against those Kurdish armed groups in Syria, because you can use the stick and carrot policy, right? On one side, Erdogan or Turkish army is fighting against those Kurdish groups in Syria. But on the other hand, you can start a new process when you feel yourself enough powerful by releasing Abdullah Öcalan. And probably the mostly YPG, PYD, or PKK supporters would probably support or they will welcome the release of Abdullah Öcalan. So Abdullah Öcalan probably is going to announce that we end the fight against Turkish state. So PKK or the other Kurdish armed groups in Syria will probably lay down their arms, or at least there will be a kind of a statement like that. I don't think that it will be realized actually, but the political statements will be in that way. So a kind of we can see in the following 2 3 months, we can see a kind of a new peace process between Turkish government and Kurdish people, both in Turkey and in Syria. Maybe also in the following years, you didn't ask, but in the following years, Turkey can recognize a kind of a Syrian Kurdistan also as Turkey de facto and de jure recognized Iraqi Kurdistan. In the beginning of or since the 1990s, Turkey was distancing itself from Iraqi Kurdistan, but from the beginning of 2000s, we see that Turkey, at the end of the day, has recognized the a political entity of Iraqi Kurdistan and has developed its relations in a very rapid speed. So Syrian Kurdistan can also be recognized in that way by the support of the United States or by the pressure on of the United States on Turkish government and so on. So both domestic politics and the developments of Syria in the recent developments in Syria are quite related to each other, I think.
Mr. Haas, I have got some sort of united question for you. New people have come into power in Syria, and I would like to know what will be the future of the new Syrian, the future of new Syrian government's attitude,
Mhm,
and the future of the relationships between new Syria on one hand and Russia on the other, Iran and Turkey on the other hand. And at the same time, the new authorities of Syria are proclaiming that they are aimed to protect the rights of all communities of Syrian country, of
mhm.
Syrian state. So how much we have to trust to these claims, and at the same time, are they so keen to protect the rights of those minorities of Syria, or this is just a temporary smokescreen?
If to be frank, I don't know because I'm quite cautious. We should wait and see, I think. There are so many uncertainties. Of course, there is a kind of a professional PR intelligence agencies, I can say, uh, which, which are backing the HDS, I think so, because that kind of a capturing of a country, United Nations recognized country, Syria, by a terrorist organization, didn't take such a reaction from the Western side. We see that Mohammed al-Jolani, the HDS leader, is giving interview to CNN. And so we also see that in the last 2 weeks, terrorist, uh, the word terrorist is not used regarding the HDS, mostly rebels or opposition force and so on. So there is a huge PR company here from the Western side about the new image of HDS. So there is a big question for me on that issue. But
So
on the
all
other,
those aspects under view a big sign of question.
yeah, of course, because we also see, mm, mostly not often, but we also see such scenes that are coming from Syria that they use the methods also as ISIS used. But of course, we see it less than before. So, or the image of Mohammed al-Jalani, how is it promoted, how he is promoted in Western media. There is a huge difference actually here. Uh, and so probably they will make they will take some steps to also get out of the sanctions, to lift the sanctions, Western sanctions, and to they will take some steps to give a moderate jihadist to the world, of course to maintain the control of the power in Syria. They also need it, in my opinion. But in the reality, we will see. We should wait. Actually, I am not that much optimistic, if to be frank.
Mr.
But
Hass,
we should also give a chance. Yeah,
Mr. Haas, nothing is clear in the future of both
yeah.
aspects that we have stressed here. The last question of mine will be associated with Iran. It's also common knowledge that Iran has been had given all necessary support to
Mhm.
Syrian government before it did collapse. So what will be the future of Iran as the state? And we are also interested whether there will be any attempts by some group of allies, maybe the Syria also will be the part of this
Mhm.
alliance that is going to undertake some measures against Iran and to overthrow the regime that is in Iran since 1979.
Yeah, I think Iran is the main loser in this game or in this development. Russia is one of the main also losers. It is also clear, but the role of Iran in the Middle East is going to diminish, in my opinion, both in Syria. It lost, actually, de facto, it lost the land corridor to Lebanon through Iraq, Syria, and so on. So Hezbollah and Iran-backed militias are also losing their control. Israel is again strengthening its position, and the Kurds also probably will have a kind of a, as I said, independent autonomy, which will be a big ally of the Israel, maybe also a neighbor of Israel from the southern part of Syria. So there will be a kind of a buffer zone between Israel and Iran through Kurds, probably. So, in my opinion, Iran's role in the Middle East is going to diminish and decline, and Russia's role also is going to decline. It is obvious that the new Syria will be much more a partner of West rather than an ally of Russia. But also we should take into account that there can appear so many problems between new leadership of Syria and Erdogan's government, Turkey, because if you stay just in Idlib, you will be you were much more dependent on Turkey and Turkish support and so on. But if you control already the Damascus, you will have much more power. So there can appear some difficulties between Damascus under HTS and Ankara. So it can give some opportunities to Iran inside and Russia in any case, but I don't think that Syria after this moment will turn into an ally of Moscow in the near future. So probably we will see much more uh, an increasing influence of Israel, the United States, United Kingdom, or some European countries in Syrian territory. But relatively, we will also see a declining of power of Iran and Russia and so on. And there can appear some kind of problems, as I said, between Damascus and Ankara. But also in the long run, Turkey can be a loser here. We didn't mention about that, but it is also possible because when your neighbor is governed by radical groups, in any case, your territory, your people can also be quite radicalized. So there will be a direct effect of HTS leadership in Syria to Turkish people, as we also see in the last 10, 15 years. We see that Turkish politics, not only society, but politics also is quite radicalized, or how to say, for example, in the last years, we have seen that Turkey has sent those rebel groups to Libyan territory, to some other African countries, and so on. So we see that Turkish army also is going to integrate it, or let me say in a different way, the jihadist groups or such fighters from different parts of the world are integrated in Turkish army also, unfortunately. And we see that Turkish society is also going to have been radicalized in the last decade. So there are some kind of a negative impacts of that process on both Turkish society and Turkish politics also. Of course, it is in the long run, but for now, Turkey seems to be a winner, but I do not agree with that argument. Mostly here we see that Turkish government, Turkish leadership is one of the main winners, but Turkey can suffer more in the long run. Mostly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Has, that you have shared your precise and
It's my
valuable
pleasure.
ideas with us. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Thank you.